For Israelis, Kfar Aza and all the other places that Hamas attacked on the 7th of October have become repositories of a very deep and still raw national trauma. And the horror that happened here has, for the vast majority of Israelis, absolutely justified everything that Israel has done since then.
Hello, I'm Paul Barry. Welcome to Media Watch. And in case you've forgotten, today is October 7th, 1 year on from the Hamas terror attack on Israel that killed 1,200 people. And on a day marked by memorials and protests around the world, you have to ask what has been achieved. Despite Israel's military victory, Hamas has not surrendered, and we now face the threat of wider war between Israel and Iran. Meanwhile, 97 hostages are still missing, 36 known to be dead. Gaza has been flattened by Israeli bombs. Nearly 42,000 Palestinians have been killed and 100,000 injured, according to Gaza's Ministry of Health, and almost 2 million refugees have been forced from their homes. So, how has the media marked the anniversary? As you'd hope, The Guardian reflects the pain on both sides, with a powerful photo essay from Israel and an equally heartrending photo essay from Gaza. The 9 papers also have stories of human suffering from Israel and Gaza, and from Jews and Palestinians in Australia, while the ABC's Middle East correspondent has spoken to survivors of the Hamas attack in an abandoned kibbutz.
So although a year has passed, the pain and grief is still incredibly raw.
And reported on the impact of the war in Gaza, less than 2 kilometres away. But there is no such balance in the Weekend Australian, whose front-page headlines, set in black, savage the Labor government,
abandonment of Israel,
highlight Israel's pain, and warn of rising anti-Semitism in Australia.
attacks on Jews at record levels.
The Weekend Australian ran 13 full pages with the banner Israel at War, which the paper claimed is being fought in defence of world order. And there was barely a nod to the carnage in Gaza. 42,000 dead Palestinians rarely get a mention, but the 100,000 wounded and 2 million refugees don't even figure. Civilian casualties are all but ignored. And while, quite rightly, there is a photo gallery of the missing hostages, there is not one picture or human story of a Palestinian child, woman or family. To call the coverage one-eyed is the understatement of the year. It is quite frankly astonishing and a journalistic disgrace. But there's another group that all the media forget, and while they shouldn't be the first consideration, as Reporters Without Borders reminds us, they certainly have been under fire.
Journalists targeted and killed, newsrooms destroyed, internet and electricity cut off, foreign press blocked. Since the start of the war in Gaza, Israeli forces have methodically destroyed the Palestinian territory's media infrastructure and stifled journalism.
It is a terrible toll, and it has almost wiped out Gaza's press corps.
More than 130 Palestinian journalists have been killed by Israeli forces in Gaza. At least 32 of them were targeted and killed while working.
The Committee to Protect Journalists also tracks media deaths in Gaza, putting the toll at 128 and reporting
at least 5 journalists were directly targeted by Israeli forces in killings which CPJ classifies as murders.
The CPJ says the Gaza war has been the deadliest period for journalists since it began gathering data in 1992. And it says every time a journalist
is killed, injured, arrested or forced to go to exile, we lose fragments of the truth.
And that matters more than ever in this conflict because Israel has refused from the start to allow independent reporters into Gaza, with the BBC's international editor Jeremy Bowen highlighting how hard that makes the job for people like him.
The principal thing is, for me, is TV reporting, and it's very, very hard to be a TV reporter on a story which you can't see yourself.
So we've had to rely on local journalists who were already in Gaza when Israel invaded to dodge the bombs and bullets and be our eyes and ears. And not all have succeeded. In January, an Israeli airstrike killed Hamza al-Dawdu, a cameraman for Al Jazeera and son of its Gaza bureau chief, along with his colleague, Mustafa Taraya, a freelance journalist with AFP. In the aftermath, the Israeli military accused the duo of having terrorist links, a claim that was strongly denied by their relatives and employers, with the head of the CPJ telling NBC,
often initially they deny having killed the individual at all. Then they will accuse the journalist of having either been a terrorist or engaged in militant activity.
In addition to the 100 plus who have died as Gaza was bombed to rubble, there are reporters who've suffered life-altering injuries but have stayed on the job, like Sami Shahade from Turkish broadcaster TRT, who lost his foot after an Israeli attack. Here he is now, filming on one leg. Reporters have also been injured and killed in Lebanon, which is where the war is now heading, with 7 in the firing line of Israeli shells in October last year.
2 rounds of tank shells fired from an Israeli position across the border.
What happened? I can't feel my legs! I can't feel my legs!
AFP photographer Christina Assi lost her right leg in the attack. Her AFP colleague Dylan Collins was injured, while Reuters reporter Issam Abdallah was killed. Here is footage of the journalists shortly beforehand, and here's what is left of one of their vehicles. A Reuters investigation involving 30 security, military and forensic experts, plus lawyers, medics and witnesses, found that
an Israeli tank crew killed our colleague Issam Abdallah. We condemn Issam's killing.
With AFP's global news director adding,
we have proved that those journalists doing their job, standing on that hill, were clearly targeted by 2 Israeli tank shells. We have the evidence, we have the ballistics, we have everything. It's a fine piece of journalism that does that, and that is how we will get accountability.
But when Reuters presented its evidence to the IDF, it was told,
We don't target journalists.
He did not provide further comment.
Now that Israel is invading southern Lebanon and targeting Beirut with airstrikes, foreign reporters are being taken to see the damage, although sometimes with an escort, as UK Sky reporter John Sparks explained.
We were brought here by Hezbollah, dressed in black, moving our convoy into South Beirut.
Meanwhile, reporters were also on hand in Tel Aviv as Hezbollah rockets and intercepts from Israel's Iron Dome lit up the nighttime sky.
Oh, we are looking at pictures of Tel Aviv, what you're describing.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, God. Okay, guys, we got to get off the roof. These are coming down right next to us here.
Please do, Jim.
Meanwhile, as all-out war between Israel and Iran edged closer and there was talk of bombing Iranian oil facilities, back home the biggest fuss was about something much more trivial, with a handful of protesters flying Hezbollah flags and carrying pictures of Nasrallah, sparking outraged front-page headlines in the News Corp tabloids on Tuesday.
Hate crime.
Flag fury.
Arrest this hate.
New South Wales cops ordered to hunt pro-Hezbollah radicals.
With more inside demanding the police
Stop them flying flag of hate.
That story about whether or not police could and should arrest people brandishing terror symbols dominated all week, with Ray Hadley on 2GB demanding...
No arrests were made. No arrests were made. Where's law and order? Where is it? It's non-existent.
Meanwhile, his colleague at Melbourne's 3AW, Tom Elliott, was interviewing an organiser of the Melbourne rally, and after agreeing no one wants all-out war, was directing the discussion to the conflict at home.
More locally, which is what I'm really interested in, I saw footage of Hezbollah flags and pictures and things being flown at your rally on Sunday. Were the people who flew them, were they part of the rally?
And his guest's response?
It's interesting you say you're more interested in the flags than 40,000 dead Gazans and 2,000 dead Lebanese. I mean, this is a problem with the Australian media. We're always looking for distractions and secondary issues rather than facing up to the core of what's going on, which is a massive region destabilising conflict.
Yes, sadly, it's true. Australia's media does like to bring the conflict back home. And in this case, bringing it here in more ways than one. But now to regional Queensland and a biblical promise on the evening news.
A Toowoomba businessman is promising to defy droughts and get farmers all the rain they need. His innovative Atmospherica model has caused some controversy, but so far the weather weaving has been a drought breaker.
Amazing, a man who can make it rain. So, who is this miracle worker and how does he do it?
David Miles believes the atmosphere can be moulded like architecture.
We might be able to adjust at 5% or 10%.
And he says his model, Atmospherica, can prevent droughts by harnessing the clouds.
That is quite a claim. But David Miles is adamant he can deliver, promising at least 20 millimetres of guaranteed spring rain on X for less than $5,000, with a money-back guarantee if the heavens don't open. And that's not all he can do. As 7 News reported, David Miles reckons he can stop the rain as well. Yes, you heard that right.
His tube-like creation claims to use kinetic energy to turn bad weather away across a 10-kilometre radius.
If we can widen our aperture to shield a community, then we do it.
So, did 7 News show us any evidence to prove Miles's earth-shaking prowess? Well, no.
On this map, a previous outlook for a dry October turned into a rainfall success, but no Aussie researchers have validated the model. Yet, the Bureau of Meteorology says it can't comment on the technology.
And did 7 include any weather or climate experts to ask whether it's possible to do these things? No again. But we did get a testimonial from one happy farmer who features on Miles's website, who told 7.
I've seen what he has done and what he also has failed. I would say generally his influence has been positive.
So, what do the experts think? Predictably, Professor Stephen Sherwood from the Climate Change Research Centre at the University of New South Wales was not persuaded, telling Media Watch,
"This is P.T. Barnum-style bunkum. Based on physics, this new idea is not feasible. The technical description given by the company of how it works, as far as it goes, is gibberish."
And his scathing verdict was echoed by Dr Lyndon Ashcroft, Senior Lecturer in Climate Science at the University of Melbourne, who told us,
"There is no proven technique to bring rainfall to an area in drought. No credible meteorologists or climate scientists that I know would support the claims made by this story."
Which is something 7 News should surely have told its viewers. But making their failure worse is that Miles's claims had been knocked down before. In 2019, at the peak of the drought that ravaged eastern Australia, Miles was marketing 3-month rain contracts for $50,000, and the feedback was equally sceptical, with the ACCC accusing Miles of preying on farmers, and physics professor Martin Sevier telling ABC Wimmera,
"I can tell people that there's absolutely no scientific validity to anything that this person is saying."
We asked 7 if they'd looked into David Miles's history or spoken to any experts before spruiking his company as a farmer's friend, and if not, why not? We did not hear back. But David Miles is undeterred by his critics, claiming his technology is a game-changer for agriculture and emergency services, telling Media Watch,
"Our device generates DNA-like code-based instructions, to which we observe an almost immediate response from the boundary layers of targeted atmospheric pressure systems."
And Miles says he's prepared to prove the naysayers wrong.
The company is willing to demonstrate at cost with BOM as the forecast and result data adjudicator and ABC or Channel 7 as facilitator.
So, you can't say Mr Miles isn't a believer. But surely next time the media spruik his mysterious weather machine, it would do well to speak to some of the experts who, as we've revealed, pour rain on his parade. And finally tonight to the US election and a national scoop for Sky After Dark's Rita Panahi.
Now, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz have been accused of deliberate misinformation. They've released a political ad that claims to depict 2 former Trump voters who live in Pennsylvania and who have switched to Team Kamala after the horrors of January 6.
Yes, lies, deception and misinformation, and this time from the Democrats, with Panahi zeroing in on a new campaign ad for Kamala Harris featuring farmers Robert Lang and Christina Chadwick, who have switched their support to Harris this time around.
Bob and I both voted for Donald Trump.
I voted for him twice. I won't vote for him again.
Yes, we're both lifelong Republicans.
The choice is very simple.
I'm voting for Kamala.
I am voting for Kamala Harris.
But are these people really who they say they are? On Sky After Dark, Rita Panahi and her guest Kochagada claimed a shocking revelation.
But this pair of farmers shown in the ad appear to in fact be 2 actors, Robert Lang and Christina Chadwick, and they have an extensive history of kosher of donating to the Democrats and leftist causes. For a party that talks endlessly about the dangers of disinformation and misinformation, they engage in plenty of it.
Stirring stuff. And where had Rita got this hot tip from? From Elon Musk's ex and an avid Trump supporter called Bad Hombre, obviously not his real name, who dug into Pennsylvania's political donation records and discovered Christina Chadwick and Robert Lang had given money to the Democrats and had supposedly starred in a film called Hayride to Hell. The message being that the pair in the ad were not real farmers or real Republicans, but merely actors paid to play the role.
These narratives are almost fictional narratives of
these two Trump supporters who turned, supposedly in this case, and it turns out they're Democrat actors. You can't make this stuff up.
With Panahi's guest Koshigada praising Bad Hombre for his brilliant research.
Yeah, so this is great investigative journalism by the journalists that went and found that out.
But hold on a moment, because if Bad Hombre is a real investigative journalist, and it looks like he's not, he's done a pretty poor job. Because the Robert Lang and Christina Chadwick, who Bad Hombre says gave money to the Dems, are not the couple you see in the ad. Whoops! And even though the ad's Robert and Christina did once appear as extras in a low-budget film, they are real farmers and real Republicans. With Philadelphia news site Savvy Mainline reporting...
Farmer Bob Lang, Willistown Republican supervisor and Sugartown Strawberries owner, agreed to appear in pro-Harris commercials. He's been paying for it ever since.
And last Tuesday, 6 days after she had claimed the farmers were frauds, Rita Panahi admitted, without apology, that she had got it wrong, offering this brief correction at the tail end of her show at 11:56 p.m.
In light of additional information which we've been made aware of, we're happy to point out that the people involved are not actors and do not appear to be Democrat donors. That's it from me.
Yep, that's it. But even if you saw that as midnight drew near, it was far too late. Because, as Crikey reported, by this time, the Sky News video of Panahi's claim had notched up more than 1 million views on YouTube, had been shared on X by right-wing warrior Dinesh D'Souza and others, and seen by more than 1 million people there, and been picked up by the undisputed fake news champion, Alex Jones's InfoWars, all of which helped swell the torrent of abuse that has engulfed poor farmer Bob and his wife, who now have this message on their Facebook page.
Please do not give credence to these hateful, politically motivated lies.
Amen to that. We asked Sky News if a brief correction to false accusations 6 days after they were made, after most people had gone to bed, was an adequate response. They told us...
A correction was also published online, and the segment was removed from our digital platforms.
Another lesson that ripping things from X is a road to ruin. And that's all from us for tonight. You can read statements from David Miles and Sky News on our website. Thanks to Janine Perrott for the last few weeks. Don't forget Media Bites on Facebook, YouTube and Instagram. But for now, until next week, goodbye.